Hey friends, here we are again with the Worth of a Woman, and today we're talking about humility. Not always the most fun topic, but I promise it will be rewarding. You see, if you're following along with us, then you know that the cycle we've been going through is when you understand that you are worthy of the pursuit of God, understanding you're worthy of the love of Him. You walk more in obedience, heeding His correction. And then all of a sudden, new doors open and new beginnings start happening. But I believe right after that, there's this pause where you kind of look back and go, look what He has saved me from. Look at the mess that I was, and look where we're going. And I believe that's a beautiful moment for humility to set in. You see, we know that nothing that happens is on our own accord. It's all because of God. And that's where we walk in humility. We never want to have the attitude, which I've had before in my life, I'm speaking from experience, of, I got this. Look how far I've come. When we know that all of those steps that brought us to where we are by the grace of God and by His patience and perseverance with us. You see, as we walk in humility, it can come in so many forms. Sometimes God can just be calling you to make a step of humility that is just, you're just going to do out of obedience. Sometimes we walk those steps in humility out of adoration, out of love for the Lord. When I look back on some stories that He has made me walk that humble road, sometimes they're not always the most beautiful stories. About many years ago, I was in my 20s, and I was driving by this barber shop that I drove by every day on my way to work. And the Lord told me, Nikki, go in there and tell them not to lose hope. And I'm thinking, Lord, no. you no, I don't want to do that. That's embarrassing. And so I kept driving, right? And the Lord's like, I just felt it. I knew it was God. And so I had to turn around. I parked my car and I walked into that barber shop, arguing with God all the way in there. Lord, what if there's 5 people in there? Who am I going to know what to tell? What if they're all busy? Like, I'm disturbing them or their business? And I by the time I walked through that door, guys, I was a blubbery mess. Like tears and crying and like a mess. And I walk in, and this guy is like having the broom and he's sweeping the floor, and he looks at me in kind of like a terrified face, and he goes, can I help you? And I look right at him and I say, God told me to tell you to not lose hope. Bye. And I hightailed it out of there, right? Like, that was so humbling. But I'll tell you what, before I hightailed it out of there, his countenance changed. All of a sudden, saw his face change into this smile, and I walked away crying. And like I said, those experiences that God has told me to do where I have to humble myself are not always the most beautiful stories. Sometimes I just make a mess of them, but I know I was obedient, and I know that God wanted me to tell that man to not lose hope. You know, being humble it's a hard place to be when you're being obedient, and putting yourself out there is very, very scary. But you see, true humility has nothing to do with us. I was in a season of life when God was telling me to do that I was feeling very confident in who I was with Him. And I think God wanted to remind me in that season that, hey, Nikki, you need me. It's not about you. It's all about me. And I believe that moment humbled me to remind me that I am simply a vessel, and every good and perfect gift comes from Him above. You see, true humility is actually for the sole purpose of God. Like, we are supposed to serve God, but we get the reward. You see, Matthew 23:12 says, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be rewarded. How generous is our God that we are humbled and we get the reward. See, God wants to bless His children for humbling themselves before Him. It reminds me of the story in Luke 7 of the woman who anoints Jesus' feet. And I just want to sit there for a little bit. It's Luke 7:36-50 if you want to read it. The scriptures don't provide us a name for this woman. We simply know what she was known for and the actions that she did. You see, we know that she was not known as being a woman of integrity at all. And the scriptures, Luke 7:37-38 say, when a certain immoral woman from the city heard that He, being Jesus, was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind Him at His feet, weeping. Her tears fell on His feet. She wiped them off with her hair, and she kept kissing His feet and putting perfume on them. Oh, it's a beautiful story about this woman who gives everything that she can and is just walking in humility before Jesus. But I want to dig into the scripture a little bit more to help us understand on how we can walk in humility like this woman. First of all, those tears tell me that her life was changed by him. We don't know the story of when she encountered Jesus or how that encounter happened, or we don't even have her name, but we know her life was dramatically affected by Jesus. So much so that she is transformed by him, and her first inclination is humility. Her life has been so transformed that humbleness is naturally flowing out of her. I think we can sit there, can't we? Is your life so transformed by Jesus that when you look back, you go, oh, Lord, you are so good. I am so humble before you because I know you've done all of that. Have you experienced that kind of life transformation? Because I believe he wants to give that to all of us. Another thing is this true humility that this woman did was courageous. The world looks at humility as a negative trait. But this took an act of courage, right? First of all, she had to go find Jesus. And then she didn't just stand at that door and wait for Jesus to come out. She went into that house. That was courage, right? Now, a lot of times we just have this victim mentality and we just will sit outside and be like, I need him. He needs to come to me. Oh my goodness. Sometimes we just need to go to him. We need to barge open those doors and we need to find him, right? It's okay. It's humble sometimes when we can cry out and say, I am that desperate for you, Jesus. Instead of hiding as a victim, she came and she found him. And you know what she did? The first thing she does is she knelt behind him. Now, during this time, they would sit at the table more in an inclined position, so his head would be towards the front of the table and his feet would be at the back, right? And so she actually knelt before him at her feet, and then she starts wetting his feet with her tears. Now, when I think about all that the Lord has saved me from, all the things that I deserve that he has not given me, all the things that I don't deserve that he has given me, I could wet his feet with my tears too. You see, we serve a beautiful, good God, and sometimes we need to wet his feet with our tears. We need to reflect on all that he has saved us from, on all that he has given us. In the midst of this woman being that immoral woman, she has found wholeness in him, that she is wetting the tears of Jesus, wetting the feet of Jesus with her tears. She had experienced forgiveness so much so that it poured out from her eyes. Have you experienced that kind of forgiveness? Because he wants to give us that kind of forgiveness. Thirdly, she was kissing his feet. You guys, that's worship, because you have to understand, our feet weren't clean they're not clean now. They especially weren't clean during that time, right? She is kissing the feet of Jesus as an act of worship. See, worship is a beautiful form of humility. That whole idea of hands raised high, surrendering, is a beautiful form of humility, going, Lord, I worship you. I know I am nothing without you. And sometimes we need to just worship him by kissing those feet, by honoring him, using our words to sing those praises to him. Lastly, she anointed his feet with an expensive alabaster jar of perfume. You see, she was giving Jesus everything she possibly had. She was laying her future on his feet. The old had gone, the new was come. She had found wholeness, and that she found him worthy of every drop of that expensive jar of perfume. Are you forever changed like that? Have you experienced God in such a way that you go, I want to show God that kind of humility? Because I believe just as he did with this unnamed woman, he wants to do the same thing for us. And I believe our natural inclination is going to be that same thing of walking in humility towards our God. You see, Simon the Pharisee looks down at the woman and considers what she's doing a weakness. But Jesus looks down at her out of pure adoration of love. And you know what he says to her? He says, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. You know, so often our faith, like he says, your faith has saved you. Our faith resides in our own confidence of who we are. That's where pride resides, is when we are confident in who we are. But he says, your faith has saved you. In other words, your faith in me. And God says, if we place our faith solely on Jesus, and we know in you I can be everything, every good and perfect gift, it comes from you. Every struggle that I'm going through, I can find peace and comfort in you. God says, that's where you'll find me, is in those moments. And that's where humility grows. When we tap into that adoration, that pure love that he provides us, that's where our humility grows. And I'll tell you what, it's also where our relationship with him flourishes. I want him to look down at me at the pure adoration of love and say, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So today we challenge each other to walk in humility, to make sure we understand that sometimes he will call us to do things that will require us to be humble. And we can do that out of obedience. We can do that out of pure adoration of love for him. We can do it out of both. But the important thing is that we do it. We walk in humbleness.